Hello, everybody. Welcome and thank you for being here. Today, I'm going to share about how we can unconsciously create judgments of ourselves. Okay, well, that sounds familiar, especially if you've been in my world a little bit. If you have seen the bridge, my bridge workshop, I talk about one of the definitions of trauma is not what happens to us. It is the conclusions we create as a result of what happens. And these conclusions can be either about us, about others, about the world, or about God. And it becomes the perception of how we see the world. It becomes the thing that we consider before or after doing anything. So let's say somebody gets screwed over by somebody in business, or they've unfortunately experienced a bad marriage, and they say, as after that, fighting in court, the men are terrible, men are just bad. So that blanket statement, although it could be true for them, and it's definitely their experience, no one's blaming this person for having that experience, no one's blaming this person for coming to that conclusion. We're not here to blame. But what we couldn't say for sure is that when somebody creates that conclusion, they create a blanket statement, and they begin seeing the world. They'll begin seeing the world through that lens. They are now wearing a pair of glasses that is, they used to be that there was no glasses. There was a glasses that was like, men could be good. Some men are good, some men are bad. Or one man is good and all the others are bad for me, But once we go through something and it is so disturbing, so being so disturbed has us conclude things, and these conclusions allows our nervous system to calm down. Interesting is how we work. Anyway, so then we conclude, meaning I'm putting on these glasses, we conclude that men are bad. So now we start seeing all men are bad. And we start doing things or not doing things, start speaking things or not speaking things, coming from that opinion, coming from that perspective. So that's explicit. As soon as we look at it, we can see that it's explicit. It's explicit that I am being, or I believe, or I am the source of the idea that men are bad. Now, other people can have a problem with that. We're not going to focus on that right now. Other people can have a problem with that, and they'll fight you, or they'll argue with you, or they'll try to bring evidence to the opposite. But we're not going to focus on that right now. The main thing is, first thing we want to focus is that they're through these overloads of emotions, when somebody feels so much, especially when we're young, and we don't have a loving witness, an adult in our life that assures us and tells us, no, there's nothing wrong with the world, there's nothing wrong with man, it's just this person, and what this person did is not okay, you're good. If we don't have that adult, then we're going to create those conclusions, and we're going to see the world through those things. And oftentimes these types of traumas will turn into the perception of I'm not good enough, I am bad, I'm not loved, I am alone, I'm not worthy. And these are judgments against myself that I create. Hey, give me a second. I just want to try to get this focus on better. Yeah, I think that's a little better. Anyway, so those are self-judgments. What I want to focus on today is how judgments of other people are actually judgments of ourselves. Oh, wait, what do you mean? Okay, I'll tell you exactly what I mean. Somebody looks at an adult in their life when they're young, a parent, a teacher, and they're like, okay, that is not okay. That is bad. Parent is an alcoholic. Parent is abusive. God forbid. Unfortunately, this happens. I will never be like him. I will never be an alcoholic. Sounds very righteous, sounds very good. The problem is like this. When I make a firm commitment to never be like him, what I am doing unconsciously, inadvertently, is I am saying that if I don't have this commitment, or if I don't fulfill this commitment, and I don't do something about it, if I don't consciously and with effort be nice, I'm automatically going to turn into this person that I said I would never be like. So what we're inadvertently doing is we are setting a premise, and the premise is that if I don't do something about it, I'm going to turn into that person, which means I am that person, and unless I do something about it, that's who I'm going to be. So what I'm doing is, yes, I'm only building the bricks over here, but what I'm unconsciously doing is I also set a foundation under it. I say, look at all these bricks. Look at all this structure, but don't look at the foundation. But what we're unconsciously doing is we're creating that we are that. And that is just one of the ways of how judging other people and creating commitments to never be like them, and thereby needing to fulfill that commitment and needing to do things to fulfill that commitment. Every time we do something to fulfill that commitment, we are feeding the premise, and the premise is that if I don't do anything about it, that's who I'm going to be. So if today you may have cut somebody out of your life, you've done enough therapy, you've had enough codependence, you've done enough therapy, and there's a person who was toxic in your life and you cut them off, all good. But just look at that. Look at that for a second and think to yourself, have I created any type of commitment? Is there anger in me towards that person? Is there energy constantly being fed into the cutting off of that person? Am I still activated? Well, guess what? If you still are activated, if you still are angry, if you're still actively not having that person in your life, if it just happened by default, okay, they're not in your life, that's fine. Look where it's coming from. If it's coming from the idea that they are bad, if we just look at the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, which says if you see the fault in others, it's an indication that that fault lives inside of you. So perhaps what the Baal Shem Tov is teaching us is not, on one hand, yes, face value. If you notice something in somebody else, chances are you already have it. But I would like to suggest that you're seeing something in somebody else, you're seeing a deficiency in somebody else, is what creates the deficiency inside of you. The conclusion that they are bad actually creates the idea that it's possible for me to be bad, and thereby there's something that I need to fix. So the main point of this video is to just shed light on that. Just know that it exists. See what are commitments you may have made about people that you're never going to want to be like. If you want to take it further, pay attention to people you're angry at. or you have activity, there's electricity in your relationship that is negative, look at the judgments even further. Look at the judgments that you have on other people and consider that if you are judging them, you are creating the judgment of yourself as well. So choose to forgive them, not necessarily because what they've done is forgivable. Choose to accept them, not because what they've done is acceptable. Choose to forgive and to accept, because by choosing to forgive and accept, you are freeing yourself from the possibility of turning into them. Um, how to do that? Well, one of the ways the 12 steps offers us is, the first thing is to acknowledge that this person is not well. You're not going to hate somebody for having skin issues and they're in the hospital. You're not going to hate somebody for breaking a leg and they're not well and they're in the hospital. You're not going to hate them for being sick. But the same thing is in spirituality. There are people who are spiritually sick. So the first thing to do is to acknowledge that no healthy, connected to God, conscious, good, not good, let's go, healthy, conscious, connected to God human being would ever do this type of thing. So that's the first thing to acknowledge. They're just not well. Again, doesn't mean that what they did is okay, but just acknowledge that if they were well, spiritually, mentally, they wouldn't do something like this. And once you can acknowledge that they're not well, we pray for them. Say, dear God, please give this person health, spiritual health, mental health, so that they be free from their own illness. So what you're doing also is similar to what Hasidus teaches us, and that is that the process of forgiveness is to separate the person from the act. Now, some people may have a very hard time with this, and I think if somebody is at a point where, when they consider what I'm saying as something that is spiritual bypass or giving permission or forgiveness to abusers, that is not my intention at all. My intention is 100% focused on the freedom of the person who's been abused. That's what my focus is. And in fact, the person who's the abuser doesn't even have to ever know of the process that you have done for yourself to free yourself. You don't ever have to tell the person that they're forgiven. It has nothing to do with them. It has to do with you. Free yourself. Being angry at them, of course, on the most basic level, is similar to like we light ourselves on fire and expect the other person to die from smoke inhalation, or we drink the poison and expect the other person to die, and that's on a very basic level. Like, free yourself from it, because you're just hurting yourself. But another level is that by you judging the other person as bad, and by passionately saying how bad they are and being activated by them, look closely. You may have just created a commitment. And the commitment is that, ooh, I will never be like them. And if they wear these type of shoes, I will never be caught with those type of shoes. And if they go to this type of party and these events, I will never go to these types of parties and these events. And guess what? At some point in time, you are going to find yourself in one of those events. You're going to look in the mirror and you're like, holy crap. All those things that I was judging the other person for, I just showed up in that way. And then we're going to start judging ourselves, and then we're going to try to cover it and feel ashamed and find all different ways of trying to cover it up and hide from it and become even more afraid of ever being like them. When we judge somebody as bad, we are automatically creating a fear of ever being like that. The fear of being like that is a self-judgment. It means that I am saying that if I don't do something about it, if I'm not careful, I'm going to be that person. So just look out for that stuff. And when you do your work in seeing what are the non-useful judgments that you have on yourself, also look at the non-useful judgments that you have in others. Love you all. Have a great week. Have a great year. Have a great life. And look forward to being in touch and seeing you on the other side.